want a divorce.
No, you don't.
I really don't want to be married to you anymore.
Well, why do you want a divorce? I mean, did I do something? Did I not do something?
Because when I watch you eat, when I see you asleep, when I look at you lately, I just want to smash your face in.
Come on, smash my face. Come on, you want to smash my face?
When a marriage comes to that done part, it's not always cold and passive as it may seem. And that's pretty bad if it's cold and passive. No one's talking to each other. But unfortunately, it can get even uglier than that. When a marriage is really, really bad at a critical mass is when you are in a state of contempt. Contempt is when you just can't stand each other anymore. When a couple is in contempt, and it doesn't have to be equal, by the way. He can have contempt for her. She can have contempt for him. And that is the most difficult state to try to manage and come back from. Because when you feel contempt for a person, nothing they do is right. Everything annoys you. Everything hurts you. And you find nothing good in the marriage anymore. The language of contempt, how can you recognize that for your own sake to guard against? There are certain phrases, certain behaviors and stances that we take. The words never and always can often be language of contempt. You never do this. You always are doing that. And no one is never always anything. So watch when you have your arguments, your discussions and debates and what have you, using phrases like that. You never, you always. Complaining versus criticism. It's one thing to state, I really wish you could do the dishes sometimes, versus you're an idiot. You never do anything around here. One is complaining, which could be valid. It could be healthy. It's communication. Criticism is an attack. Disrespect and dishonor. How do we argue? You do name calling, belittling, telling people to shut up. Again, oftentimes it's big for guys because guys feel like, well, I'm the head, I'm the man, shut up. But then he can keep talking. So disrespect and dishonoring your partner. Character versus symptoms. Okay, what I mean by that is imagine a fish who's swimming and he gets caught on a fishing line. Anyone who knows fishing, the fish will start jerking and pulling and ripping all around. If other fish, if you could imagine, would observe what this fish is doing, they would think like, this guy's berserk. He's acting crazy. They fail to see there's a hook inside of them ripping them apart. So don't judge a person's character by their symptoms. When you see somebody going off, acting strange, maybe yelling, doing different things, those may be symptoms. It doesn't mean she's berserk. Doesn't mean he's just crazy. Those could be signs and symptoms. Another means of language of contempt is rewriting history. Now, in my years of counseling, I can often tell a troubled marriage within the first 5 minutes. I don't care how they look or how much they're smiling or holding hands. And the way I do that is I would ask certain questions, like, tell me about your first date. And then I would listen to how they recall something in the past. When I hear things like, well, he showed up late, wasn't even dressed right. So your memory is something negative now. Don't look around. You can't recall a past situation without it being negative. That's usually a sign that there's something wrong here, that there's a problem. Because that probably wasn't your first view, your first recollection on that first date. You thought you had the Google eyes and you just thought he was just as cute as could be. But now through the process of time, you can't remember anything good about it anymore. You recall all of your recollections are now colored by the present. And you start inferring and imposing your negative feelings on your past. And I've heard it time and time. I've heard it. You should have saw him at the wedding vows. He was ridiculous. It was their wedding. And even that now is something negative. He spent more time talking to his friends than his own new bride. All right, so these negative recollections, rewriting history. Now, in talk about counseling, when you go to counseling, I've often said that if I wasn't a pastor, I may have been a lawyer, because I just had a fondness for legal matters. But if I were a lawyer, I would not be a family lawyer. Because family law, like family counseling, it just never ends. Give me a murder case anytime. Because something happened on a date, they either did it or they didn't do it. Once it's done and over with, that's it, the end of the case. With marriage, it just goes on and on and on. I want a divorce. Okay, let's file the papers. Well, I want a restraining order on him. All right, let's do that. All right, now he violated the restraining order. All right, let's do that. Want to pay charges on that. Okay, I want to drop it. We're working it out now. And we do that. So it's just always changing. So family counseling can be very challenging for many people because of that. But you have to understand why people come for counseling. And I will very often times ask them on the onset, why are you here? What do you hope to get from this? Because people come for counseling for different reasons. A lot of people want a referee. They want the counselor to basically choose a side. They want the counselor to show him that he's wrong or straighten her out from what she's doing. So they want a referee. Sometimes people come to counseling because they just want you to fix it. Just solve this. You lay down the law, just tell me what to do.
I've made a list of everything this could possibly be about at my end. May I read it to you?
Please, of course.
Because I emailed it to myself. Okay. Am I still trying to figure out why the marriage failed? Do I want to get back together? Do we have unfinished business? Is this about revenge? Or am I just lonely? Or is it my caretaker thing? I mean, the kids are finally gone now, and all of a sudden Jake is back, and I get to take care of him in some way. Now, I understand. I get how therapy works. I really do. We look at things, we examine them, weeks turn into months, and we're going on 8 years now. And I'm okay with that. I really am. Believe me, I like it. I do. But in this case, I need you to tell me what you really think. Like, don't do this. You know, I'd like you to say, don't do this. It's absolutely wrong. Or go ahead. You'll be fine. I actually want to be told what to do.
So oftentimes counseling is basically that. You're looking for someone to tell me what to do. Then, of course, there's premarital counseling. Now, again, I take a different posture to this. I personally am not a fan of premarital counseling. For the most part, don't believe in it. And what I mean by that is any kind of counseling on any day is good, can't be bad. So that's not really what I'm referring to. But there's a couple of issues here. For one, you're talking to theoretically two grown people, and I'm just really not into telling grown people what they need to be doing. So if you're 22 and he's 24 and you guys want to get married, you don't need a supervisor. You don't need a father to tell you and instruct you on what to do. You ought to know what you're doing at that point. But there's another reason why I'm not a big fan of premarital counseling is because you're talking to a closed audience. When you do premarital counseling, you got two people that know they are in love, that God has picked this person for them. There is no other person for them in the universe. We know what we're thinking. We know what each other likes. We are just so in love. We're never going to have any of those problems that other married couples have. So they're closed-minded. No matter what you try to say, they're thinking like, yeah, that's fine for other people. We got this. We are in love. You don't understand. God put us together. So you're basically talking to a closed audience. They're really not open to a whole lot of information to begin with because they think they got that. So what I try to do, and I do premarital counseling when needed, I want to, for one, encourage communication. Let them talk about finances. You'd be surprised how many people never get into that. I've had couples that 2 weeks after they're married, literally 2 weeks after they're married, I get a phone call from her and she's like, he wants me to get a job. I have to work. And I'm thinking to myself, what did you guys talk about while you were dating? Didn't this ever come up? Or you hear, he doesn't want kids. She doesn't want kids now. All of these things, these are the things that you should be talking about. Children, vocation. He wants me to work. He wants to change jobs. He wants to go back to school. Location. He wants to move to California. All of my family's here. My grandchildren are here. I never thought about moving to Nevada. All of these are things that amazingly don't come up while people are dating. So when I get with people that are looking to get married, I try to encourage, these are the things you need to talk about. Because these are the things that are going to bring problems when things start to go wrong. These are the areas that they're going to go wrong in. Another thing is I try to encourage resources. Again, I know I'm talking to closed minds, and I know that they think they don't need anything, but I try to encourage them that when things go wrong, and they will, use the resources, such as the Word of God, such as prayer, such as your church, such as counseling. Don't wait till you get to the miserable stage before you start looking for these things. Get them early. Start looking for these things as resources. All right, I want to talk a little bit now about dysfunctional families. Because a marriage is the birth and the uniting, the creation of a family. Even if there's no kids, it's still a family. Let me just say this in the outright. Most people come from dysfunctional families. Most families are dysfunctional. And I know that's kind of like a cliche phrase now, dysfunctional family. We're all somewhat dysfunctional, okay? But for purposes of definition, Dysfunctional family is a home environment where conflicts and misbehaviors are constant and customary. It's the norm. Now, we don't need to go outside of the Bible to see dysfunctional families. The patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the 12 sons of Israel. This family was one of the most dysfunctional families you will ever read about. They were quite a dysfunctional bunch. Their dysfunction had a particular trend: deceitfulness and favoritism. That was their choice of dysfunction. And throughout these generations, there was constant deceitfulness, lying, and favoritism. Let's look at the deceitfulness. Well, we start with Abraham. It came to pass when he came near to Egypt that he said to Sarai, his wife, "See now, I know you are a beautiful woman, and when the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife,' and they will kill me, but they will let you live. So please say that you are my sister, so that it may go well with me." Nice. So right out the gate, we see Abraham who wants to perpetuate a lie. When we go to Egypt, we've got some business to take care of. They're going to check you out. They're going to want you, which I find, by the way, most interesting, because here's a woman in the 90s, and she is that beautiful that Abraham is afraid that someone is going to snatch her up. You know, I hear people that say, when I get to heaven, I want to see Paul, I want to see Peter, I want to see Sarah. All right, so they go there, and sure enough, then Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this that you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife, take her and go." So he's lying. Now, Abraham had a response to this. Abraham said, "Because I thought surely there would be no fear of God in this place." Notice he's critiquing them as being ungodly, but it's the Pharaoh who doesn't want to commit the sin here, and it's Abraham who's lying. "They will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she's actually my sister, the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife." So what Abraham is saying is that, well, technically it wasn't a lie. Okay, but he was trying to deceive it. Well, when we get to Isaac, his son, he turns around and does the exact same thing. So Isaac lived in Gerar. When the men of the place asked about his wife, he said, "She is my sister." But he was afraid to say, "my wife," thinking that the men of the place might kill me on the account of Rebekah, for she was beautiful. So here we have one liar who turns around and produces another liar. And Isaac didn't have the technical out that his father had. So we see lying and deceitfulness being passed on within the family. We go to Rebekah, and Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "Behold, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau, saying, 'Bring me some game and prepare me a savory dish for me.'" And you know the story. So it's Rebekah now who teaches Jacob to deceive his father and rob his brother. "Now therefore, my son, listen to me as I command you. Go and take the flock and bring me 2 choice goats." So again, now deceit comes in, and Jacob now is deceiving by guidance of his mother to deceive her husband, his father, and his brother. When we get to Jacob has mastered deception down to a science. Esau said, "Isn't he rightly named Jacob? He has deceived me these 2 times." The name Jacob means deceiver. So Jacob becomes an artist at deceiving and lying. But you see that this here flaw was something that was pervasive within this family. Then we get to the issue of favoritism. And again, it's all through this family. With Isaac. Now, Isaac loved Esau because he had a taste for games, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So we see favoritism right out the gate here. With Jacob, he loved Rachel more than Leah. It had got to a point where God actually stepped in. Now, the Lord saw that Leah was unloved. He opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. As it goes on, now Israel, who is Jacob, loved Joseph more than all his sons. So again, you see favoritism throughout this family. That favoritism of loving Joseph, of course, produced his brothers saw that his father loved him more than all his brothers, so they hated him. And of course, you know the story. They moved to actually attempt to kill him. And when they backpedaled on that, they ended up selling him into slavery. So again, you see deceitfulness and you see favoritism. Now, the dysfunction comes to a fever pitch with the two sisters. These are two sisters in the same family. Now, the Lord saw that Leah was unloved. He opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. With Leah, Leah conceived and bore a son and named him Reuben. For she said, because the Lord has seen my affliction, surely now my husband will love me. Get what's happening here. She has conflict in her marriage, and she names her son in recognition of that conflict. The name Reuben means behold. She names him that because she thinks, surely now my husband will love me. So naming her son had everything to do with her broken relationship with her husband. It goes on. Then she conceived again and bore a son and said, because the Lord has heard that I am unloved by who? Her husband. He has therefore given me this son also. So she named him Simeon. Again, imposing her conflicts onto her children. It goes on. She conceived again and bore a son. Now, this time my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore, he was named Levi. You see the pattern here. She is imposing her broken relationship with her husband onto her children. And then we get to the 4th son, and it gets a little strange. It says, she conceived again and bore a son, and said, this time I will praise the Lord. Therefore she named him Judah. Then she stopped bearing. Now, it would seem like, well, this was a good thing. She named him Praise the Lord. But that's really not what's happening here. If you read the context, she's gloating, because now she has 4 sons to her sister's 0. So she's actually gloating. How do we know this? Because it doesn't stop. She keeps doing this. At this point, God steps into this feud with Rachel. Now, when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she became jealous of her sister. This is the motive here. Then she said to Jacob, give me children or else I die. Here's some desperateness for you. So she gave him her maid Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob went into her. Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, God has vindicated me and has indeed heard my voice and has given me a son. Therefore she named him Dan. Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a 2nd son. So Rachel said, with mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister and have indeed prevailed. And she named him Naphtali. Look at what's happening in this family. These children are literally bearing and reflecting the conflicts, the dysfunctions of this family. I could only imagine what Thanksgiving dinner was like, or any dinner. Or you're over with friends and you say, like, wow, that's an interesting name. Where'd you get that name from? And then after, well, you see, my mother hated her sister because my father loved her more, so they named me that. Imposing all of that dysfunction, all of your conflict onto the children, and so dysfunctionality pervades. This is actually called espousing their kids. When we talk about espousing your kids, we're not talking about anything kinky or incest or anything really disgusting like that. That's not what we're talking about at all. It's when you compensate your broken marriage through your children. So your son becomes the husband that you never had. And so you start interacting with him. Again, not sexually, but interacting with him in ways that are not fitting for a mother-son relationship. So you're calling him up. What do you want for dinner tonight? What should we do tonight? Do you want to watch a movie? Things that you should be talking about with your husband, you're now doing this with your kids because your spouse isn't there. And again, the other way around. Honey, daughter, would you fix me a cup of coffee? And she brings coffee. She's taking care of him. Spouse and your kids, these are signs of dysfunction. Now, in dysfunctional families, oftentimes you can actually trace it many times to one guy, one person in that family, a starting point, a ground zero. And we kind of see that in this family. You have Abraham and Isaac, for instance. It started with Uncle Laban. Now, Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban, and Laban ran outside to the man at the spring, and you get an insight to what he's about when Laban, saw the ring and the bracelet on his sister's wrist. He says, "Come in, blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand out here, since I have prepared this house and a place for your camels?" So Laban is attracted to the jewelry that he brings for Rebekah. So here we have Laban, who is related to Rebekah, Uncle Laban. And so now Laban has a relationship with Abraham and has a relationship with this family. Well, at one point, Rebekah now, they have their children. Rebekah said to Isaac, "I'm tired of living because of the daughters of Heth. If Jacob takes a wife from the daughters of Heth, like these from the daughters of the land, what good will my life be to me?" So now again, she's complaining about her life based on who her son will marry. So what does she do? So Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him and said, "You will not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and there you will take yourself a wife from the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother." So now we have Laban, who has a relationship with all of these families. And of course, we would read about the conflicts that Jacob and Laban had. So we see that a lot of their trouble actually was tied to Uncle Laban.